Mr. Jonathan Kaylor.
Thank you, Ben. I appreciate that. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to The Customer is Not Always Right. The customer is always right. Always right. What a polarizing statement. The customer is always right. Because in the context of a customer relationship, if the customer is always right, then somebody else has to be always wrong. And we can't discount the psychological impact that always being wrong takes on someone who's working on the front lines every day trying to satisfy their customer. The customer is always right. I was in high school learning how to write a 5-paragraph essay, and my English teacher said, avoid gross generalizations. And I've lived my life by that. So you can't, the fact is no one is always right. The fact is there are areas of gray that we have to navigate through the course of an interaction on the front lines. And when you set up an always right, always wrong scenario, or an us versus them, or a yes versus no, the problem that you encounter is that then it becomes, you create this conflict between the frontline employee and the customer. And when you have someone who's always right, the customer who's always right, they have no responsibility for the outcome of the transaction. Well, what the hell? I'm the customer. I can say and do whatever I want. I'm always right. And that is not how you build mutually beneficial relationships. In 2012, my wife and I made the decision to move to the Pacific Northwest. We were living in Cincinnati in the Midwest, and we'd been talking about moving to the West Coast for a number of years. And in November of 2012, I got a job offer to be the customer service manager at a manufacturer here in Vancouver. And when we made that decision to move, obviously everything started to happen really fast. So from November, we were here in January. So it was like 60 days. We just uprooted our lives in the Midwest and moved across country. And even though we'd been planning for this and saving for this for a number of years, everything was just way more expensive than we thought it was going to be. And we were hemorrhaging cash. I mean, we were just bleeding cash. And so we talked at length about, well, what are we going to do? We need help. We have to do something. And so we looked at all of our options, and we decided to get a 0% interest credit card. Now listen, this is not a financial services seminar, so I am not going to argue with you guys on the pros and cons of credit card and going into debt. But for us, it was a good fit for what we needed at the time. A 0% interest on purchases and balance transfers for 24 months. And around that same time, we were talking about our overall banking relationships. Everything else in our life was changing. And we had actually a bank that we really liked, that we were working with for a number of years. And you guys know what a pain in the butt it is to change banks and do all of that. And even though they didn't have any locations out here, we said, you know what, we're going to stick with them. They've been good to us. We've got good accounts, and now they're helping us out, to give us kind of this 0% interest bridge loan for the next 24 months. And so the decision we made was we were going to finance the actual moving expense. We were going to pay the movers with our brand new 0% interest on purchases and balance transfers for 24 months. The problem was when moving day arrived, our physical card hadn't actually arrived to us in the mail. And so, no big deal, just paid with my existing credit card because it's 0% interest on purchases and balance transfers for the next 24 months. And so we successfully moved. We went all the way across country. We got settled in, and I called the bank. And I said, hey, I'd like to make a balance transfer to my new card. And she said, I'm sorry, I can't do that. I can't do that. The words, they still echo in my brain. I can't do that. I said, I'm sorry. Let me explain. We just moved across country. Okay, I just got this brand new card, 0% interest on purchases and balance transfers. The physical card didn't arrive to us in time for me to actually make the purchase at the time, so I put it on my existing card. So can you help me out and do the transfer? And she said, I'm sorry, I can't do it. It's only transfers on outside bank cards. Only do it on out. I said, you understand what's happening. Can you help me? I'm a good customer. I'm trying to keep all my bank accounts with you. I'm sorry, I can't do it. Needless to say, we ended up changing banks shortly thereafter. But what it illustrated to me and what I've seen since, I mean, that example is one that we encounter all of the time. Frontline employees saying, I can't do something. They're bogged down by policy. They're not empowered. Their management doesn't trust them. And certainly in highly regulated industries like banking, like healthcare, where regulations and policy and procedure is everything, or else they can get into real trouble, it's very, very difficult as a frontline employee to navigate the current customer landscape. And frontline employees have an awful lot on their shoulders. In the Venn diagram of organizations, where all the different departments of an organization meet, from sales and operations and engineering and product development and marketing and product management, where all of those things meet on a day-to-day basis is your frontline employees. That's a lot to have on your shoulders every day as a frontline employee trying to navigate the current customer service landscape. And of course, we all hear the buzzwords, right? Loyalty programs and analyze big data and omni-channel customer service. And all of those things are great and all of those things are important, but those are marketing terms. Those are not frontline employee customer experience terms. And so what's particularly difficult in the existing customer service landscape is that all of these things that we hear every day in the news, what we hear from marketing people, is actually building a framework towards less human-to-human interaction. I'm going to say that again. We're actually building a framework for less human-to-human interaction. And so what are you supposed to do as a frontline employee? Because it's only going to get harder. Customer service is a very important aspect to brand loyalty. Without good customer service and without understanding the current customer service landscape, how do you build loyalty? And most Americans have higher expectations for customer service today than they did a year ago. And I guarantee you they are going to have a higher expectation for customer service tomorrow than they do today. Now, customer service is just a part of this. And frontline employee relationships with customers is just one part of this for me. I started the H2H experience because I've become very disenfranchised with the polarization that we see in the world. When I hear people talking about right and wrong and us versus them and winning and losing, I get very disenfranchised that we're unable to navigate these areas of gray. But most people, it seems that I read now, it's I can't be right unless you're wrong. These two things have to be together. And I don't believe that that's true, because I believe that there is way more that connects us as human beings than separates us. And when you can navigate the areas of gray in our lives, that's when we can celebrate the real human experience. And that's what the H2H experience is all about. It's human-to-human connection and bringing people together. Now today we're talking about it under the context of frontline and customer relationships. Several years ago, I read an article about some customer service mishap, and the article itself wasn't terribly memorable or compelling in any way. It was, an article talking about a frontline employee who made a massive mistake with a customer, and of course it went viral. And I was sad because it's like, well, here's a customer service employee who clearly doesn't have the training or the knowledge or the empowerment or the tools to be successful, and they're being, vilified in this article. And like I said, the article wasn't memorable. I don't even remember what the experience was. But you know what I did think was interesting was I read the comments in that article. And I spent way more time on the comments than I did on the actual article. There were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of comments. And I was really intrigued by the fact that there were themes that were repeated throughout those comments. And I thought about it in terms of, the frontline customer experience and the things that really destroy customer service. And these are those customer service killers, right? It's inability to actually contact a live person. I mean, that is number one. It is so hard, it seems these days, to actually contact a live person. Having your customer service in a foreign country, real or perceived, by the way. You don't actually have to have your customer service in a foreign country, but if me as a consumer believes that, it's a customer service killer. Multiple touch points and a lack of seamless, customer interactions. I had to talk to 10 people before somebody would help me. These things kill the frontline customer experience. And is it our customer service representatives' fault? I don't believe so. Obviously, a lot of, there's skill sets that are involved in that and personalities. But by and large, our frontline employees are not given the tools and the resources that they need in order to successfully navigate these interactions. And so how do we do that? How do we provide that training and those tools and those resources? I call it the across-the-desk service. Growing up professionally, I was a banker, and I spent a number of years in retail banking specifically. And in retail banking, your days are, they can be wide-ranging because you never know who's going to walk through your door on a given day. I would have people who would walk in with $1 million who wanted advice for their retirement. And then right behind him or her is somebody who is overdrawn on their account, they can't pay their rent, they don't have any money, and they need my help. And so all those years ago, I was fortunate enough to build a skill set, this customer experience skill set, this across-the-desk service mentality, where I would connect with our customers on a personal basis and really get to know what it was they were after and how I could help them regardless of their situation. I would make that emotional connection and offer a personalized solution to them. And that's a really important skill set in today's customer service landscape because 15 years ago, 20 years ago, nobody heard the term customer experience. That wasn't even a thing. And so I was fortunate enough to be able to build that mentality and those skills and that philosophy all those years ago, before it was actually a thing. And now, I have taken that philosophy and brought that to all of the roles that I've had since then, because it's applicable not just in a one-to-one environment, but it's also applicable in a business-to-business environment, in manufacturing, in distribution. That one-to-one, across-the-desk service, that personalized solution is meaningful across a wide variety of industries. And so what is this customer experience that we all keep talking about? So I'm going to use an analogy for the evolution of the frontline customer experience. And I'm going to do it at the deli counter. So myself, I eat turkey sandwiches every day for lunch. People think that I'm crazy for that. Literally, I had somebody say, I think you've got some psychosis because you eat the same turkey sandwich every day for lunch. But I go to the deli counter to get my pound of lunch meat because I know that pound of lunch meat is going to make my sandwiches for me for the week. And I like it cut in a specific way, right? I mean, that's just me. But when you think about it from a lean manufacturing standpoint, right, it should all be, very process-driven and procedure-driven. We've got the steps. Okay, I cut it always the same way. If I'm the deli worker, I cut it always the same way. It goes into the tissue paper, folds over the same way, into the bag. The label's in the same place every single time, and then off to the customer, right? Repeatable, no waste, very efficient. But in the customer experience frame, where we need to personalize these customer experiences, there are so many aspects of that transaction that the deli counter person could try to use to make that a personalized type of transaction. Well, how thick or thin do you like your meat? Do you want the tissue paper in there at all? And that's a thing. I had no idea. I thought everybody liked the tissue paper. I had a conversation with a coworker of mine about this analogy, and she said, oh, you like the tissue paper? Ooh, no, man, I don't want it in there. It gets all mealy and gross and makes my turkey all nasty. I'm like, yeah, but it's, anyway. So from a personalized standpoint, there are all of these things that go into that transaction that the deli counter person could do. I'm really sad to see that they're actually going the other way because now there's the self-service stand in Freddy's, right? In the grocery store, they've got the self-service stand. It's all pre-cut. And then you go over and you can pick it up. And that's fine for people who want that. That's fine for people who want that. But when I go to the deli counter and I say, hey, I'd like a pound of lunch meat, and he literally puts his arm around me and walks me over, well, you can get one right here. Literally telling me I'm not going to cut your lunch meat for you. Anyway. And the biggest problem in all of that are customers irrational. Customers are completely irrational. I'm pretty sure I just demonstrated that in that previous story about how irrational customers can be. But I'll prove it even further. How many of you have ever stood in front of an elevator, don't be liars, pushed the button, waited for a moment, got impatient, pushed the button a second time? I know I have. How many of you, working on your computer, hit the button and it rotates? So you hit the button again. Or even better, you slam the mouse on the desk. Who's done that? Huh? Nobody? I don't believe you. You know what I do? When I lock my car, I have to click the lock twice so that it honks. Isn't that irrational? That's insanity. I have literally checked the doors. All right, I'm going to click it once and I'm going to check all the doors. It's always locked. I know it's locked, but I'm walking away and I have to hit it a second time so that now it's really locked. Customers are completely irrational. And the biology behind that is the part of the brain that makes decisions is the one that guides your emotions. And what's really interesting is it has no capacity for language. And so for those of you who are familiar with Simon Sinek and start with why, he talks about the fact that the decision-making part of your brain that has no capacity for language, so when we say things like, I just went with my gut, that's the other side of our brain, or the rational side of our brain, trying to verbalize the decision-making part of our brain. And what that means is that as frontline employees, we have to get to the emotions of our customers. We have to get to a more subconscious level with our customers. Colin Shaw from Beyond Philosophy, who's a thought leader in this particular type of thinking within the customer service and customer experience space, this is one of his theories about emotional customer service and relating to customers on an emotional level. And that if we can't, as frontline employees, get to the emotional or subconscious and are only dealing in the rational, then we don't have as good a probability of a successful outcome with those interactions on the front lines. And so what are the specific emotions that we're talking about? Well, again, Colin Shaw talks about the advocacy cluster and the recommendation cluster and the emotions that are tied within what it takes for me to actually be an advocate for your business, to build loyalty. What are those things that I need to feel? I need to feel happy and I need to feel cared for. But the opposite is also true because there's a destroying cluster. And if you think back to my story of the banking relationship, when we moved out here, we were trying to be loyal. We were going to stay with that bank. We had been banking with them for a number of years, and we decided we were not going to change that relationship until I felt neglected and unhappy and dissatisfied. And I was moving, so I was stressed. And I was disappointed that my new car didn't do what I needed it to do. And so, like that, I made the decision we were going to change banks. And that's how fast it happens. Even with your best customers, you can lose it and destroy that loyalty in a heartbeat if you are not cognizant of their emotional state of mind. So the customer is always right. That's not what I believe. Because again, we're trying to remove the polarization of right versus wrong. What's more applicable is that the customer's perception is what's right. How the customer is perceiving things with that interaction that they're having with your organization, with your products. And when you can understand their perception and you honor their perception, that's when you can make real connection. And so my belief is, my thesis is, customer retention is built through human-to-human interaction, right? And there's other facets, and there's other aspects. But for those of us on the front lines every day, and for those of us who are managing teams on the front lines every day, that human-to-human interaction is where you really build customer retention. And so, I don't really like the word retention anyway. Retention is a very passive sort of idea. It's a noun, retention. Think about it in terms of to retain. Think about it as a verb. It's an action. It's intentional. To retain. And what does that really mean? Well, to continue to keep in possession of. To continue to keep in possession of. That means I already have it. And if I'm a frontline employee, I need to hold on to what's already mine, because I promise you, your competitors are right behind you trying to take it from you. To hold in memory, to keep in mind, to remember. Memories are very powerful things. And if we have the mindset that we're creating memories with our customers every day, those memories are going to help you to retain those customers. How powerful are memories? They can put you in an exact time, an exact place. When I was a kid, we used to go to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina for vacation. And we stayed at a condo complex that had an awesome game room. They had a bowling alley, they had a huge arcade and pool tables. And that year, Gloria Estefan's 1, 2, 3 was very popular. You guys know that song, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, come on baby, say you love me. You know that one, right? To this day, I hear that song, and I am immediately transported to that game room. I know what it smells like. I know what it feels like. I know what it looks like. I can hear the Contra machine, right, that I used to play in the arcade. Memories are extremely powerful things, and when you create memories, they don't have to be as stark as the one that I just described to you. But when you create those memories, good or bad, it's going to have an impact on your retention. And finally, to hold secure. Hold secure like you would your parent or your children or your pets. These are your customers. These are the lifeblood of your business. To retain is everything for a frontline employee and the people that manage them. And so in order to effectively manage this customer retention that we just talked about, you have to have the right mindset. The H to H mindset, the human-to-human mindset. Because the human-to-human mindset creates these human connections. And that's multifaceted. But there's factors involved that I'm calling the retention factor. Because in order to successfully retain your customers, or in some cases unsuccessfully retain your customers, you have to understand customer engagement, and you have to understand the severity of the circumstances that you're faced with. And when you have a high level, the higher the level of your engagement, combined with the higher level of severity, the more critical that transaction is to retaining a customer. And when you have the H to H mindset, and when you're navigating the areas of gray, every transaction has a purpose. And for us on the front lines, that purpose is to make sure that we are recognizing customer engagement, or we're creating it. Because there are certainly situations where you have a low level of customer engagement and a high level of severity. But you can also have highly engaged customers and a low level of severity. And so the importance or the critical nature of that retention on that transaction may not be as high. But as a frontline employee, if I know that the customer engagement is high, and remember, customer engagement is not necessarily a positive thing. Customer engagement can be a negative thing. I could be angry or frustrated, but I'm engaged. And I have to recognize that, oh, I have a very engaged customer. And the severity is not the severity for me, it's the severity for the customer. So if I've got a highly severe circumstance and a highly engaged customer, those are the interactions that we as frontline employees and us as managers have to make sure that we're providing the tools and the resource to navigate that, to understand that emotional subconscious in order to create proper memories. So how do you actually do that? Number one is look beyond the transaction. This is my favorite, and I think the most important from the mindset standpoint. Years ago, I worked for a company that had a recalled product. And this particular product was a home product. It was installed in the home. And it was recalled because it was deemed not to be safe. This was about 15 years before I ever started working, or 10 years before I ever started working there. And so the company worked extremely hard to get the word out about these recalled products, going through insurance companies, going through local utilities, going through news outlets, et cetera, et cetera. And we had an agreement with the Consumer Protection Agency about a replacement program. 2 years, a 2-year replacement program that we agreed to legally. Those were our legal obligations. We then voluntarily extended that program for 2 additional years. Not a day went by after I started working there that we didn't get calls about recalled products in people's homes. And so when I arrived as the customer service manager, we had scripts. Here's what we say. Dear Mr. Customer, we had a replacement program 10 years ago that went on for 2 years, and we were even nice enough guys to extend it 2 more years, so you have to go buy a new replacement heater yourself. That is the rational explanation for what was happening with the customers. In a lot of these circumstances, the customers didn't realize that it was a recalled heater until they were either trying to sell or buy a home. And it came up during the inspection process. And so they would call us and say, I just had my home inspection. I've got this recalled heater. What can you do? Looking beyond the transaction, how do they feel? What does it feel like to sell your home? What does it feel like when you're in the midst of a move and you're trying to organize buying and a lot of times selling a home? You're on both sides of the transaction. It's extremely stressful. And the last thing I want is to have to deal with this doggone thing, this doggone product that I just found out is recalled. And now you're going to tell me that you can't help me? What do you think they're going to do? They're going to get upset, they're going to get frustrated, they're never going to use my products again, and they're going to tell all their friends and family and anybody who will listen, this company doesn't care about its customers, it doesn't care about the safety of its products, and it wants your house to burn down. Are any of those things true? None of those things are true. We care deeply for our customers and the safety of our products. We did a voluntary extension of the recall program for 2 extra years. We care deeply about these products. But that's not what the customer hears, and that's not what the customer experiences. And so in that situation, it's, I know you're stressed out, and the last thing you need in your moving is to have to deal with this, and I'm sorry about that. Let me lay out a couple of options for you. And sometimes they would buy a replacement heater, but acknowledging their emotional state de-escalates the situation immediately. Oh, these guys do care about me. Oh, they are going to help me get a replacement. Sometimes they would do a refurbished product that we offered. A lot of times they kept yelling and they wanted something for free. And they said, no, this is your product, this is your problem, you replace it. And you know what we did? We replaced it. And do you know why? Because for $50, $100, $500, becomes a marketing expense for us, right? And then when you think about it in those terms, listen, this person is now going to go out and say, these guys care about their customers. They did take good care of me. They did exactly what I needed. And you're telling me your marketing departments aren't spending $500 to try to get that kind of message out to the marketplace? You never sacrifice short-term, don't say never. Don't speak in gross generalities. Don't sacrifice short-term cost for long-term customer value. Customers are not a distraction to the next part of the H to H mindset. So often we are bogged down. We have so much to do. We're very busy that customers become a distraction. And the myth is that the fewer calls that I'm receiving or the fewer complaints that I'm receiving, the better job I'm doing. and that's a myth. Another company that I worked for, we used to bury the telephone number. We literally buried it. Wasn't on the main page. You had to go to the contact us page, and then you had to do another click or two just to get to the phone number if somebody wanted to call us. Buried it. And then you know what happened? A litany of menus and messages explaining what to do. No more. And do you know why? Because if a customer is calling me, they either have to or they want to. And either way, I better be there to pick up the phone. 91% of customers will leave without complaining. So think about that. For every one customer that calls your business to complain, 9 others have already left your business without saying a thing. And if you make it even more difficult and you're trying to steer them into a communication channel that they don't want to go, they're gone. Goodbye. You've lost them. Customers will not communicate with you through the channel that you want them to communicate through. They will communicate through the channel that they want to communicate through. It's a fact. And when you shut that down and you don't listen to those customers, they're gone. And you don't even have a chance to recognize that engagement. You don't even have a chance to have the opportunity to try to connect with them emotionally. So my philosophy has always been, I want as many people to call as possible. I want to maximize my interactions. I want to be on as many channels as I possibly can. Now again, depending on the size of your company and what you do and how many employees you have, maybe you can't be on every single communication channel. But if you're only on one communication channel or 2 communication channels, it better be right up front, so the customer knows exactly how they can get in touch with you. There is no can't. I literally removed the word can't from the vocabulary of my teams who are working on the front lines. I don't believe in can't. And I would tell the teams, you can do anything you want. We can do anything we want. There's things we're not going to do. There's going to be things that I choose not to do. But when you think in terms of can't, it's about policy. Oh, I can't. It's policy. But as a manager of frontline teams, when I say there is no can't, we can do anything we want, that's very empowering. Now it's not about policy. Policies and procedures and regulations are really important. But this shuts the walls down of people who are dealing with customers every day. They don't feel empowered. Focus on the things that you can do. Focus on the things that you will do. And then find ways to say yes. It feels so good to say yes. For so long, we've set up this us versus them scenario between customers and frontline employees. And saying yes as a customer service rep is a weakness. No, I'm going to find ways to say no. I don't want to give away anything I don't have to. I'm going to find a way to say no. And that goes back to those polar opposites, that us versus them mentality. And it's not an us versus them mentality. In the current world that we live in, it has to be an us versus us mentality. And finding ways to say yes is part of that H-to-H mindset. And unfortunately, all of this breaks down if there isn't broader strategic alignment within your organization. I could have the best frontline employee in the whole world, but if there isn't empowerment and trust and strategy that comes down from the top levels of the organization that flows all the way through to the front lines, all of it starts to break down. And part of the H-to-H experience is about those human-to-human connections internally as well as externally. And so when you have all of these different personalities and all of these layers of the organization, you end up in this web of misperceptions. And why is that? Well, because you have 3 very distinct types of people in all of those levels. And these apply to the top levels of the organization, to management level, frontline, and even your customers. There's leaders, there's followers, and there's users. And so the leaders are great, right? We all love the leaders, right? They're solution-oriented. They can navigate the areas of gray. They're innovative and creative. They're very solution-oriented. They're empathetic, but they can also be know-it-alls, right? They can get distracted very easily. They can be unfocused at times. And that's why you have to have the followers, because they're a complement to the leaders. And the followers are like, just tell me what to do. I don't want to think for myself. Just tell me what you want me to do and I'll do it. Right? They have a hard time navigating those areas of gray. It all is very black and white. It's all very policy driven. They're deathly afraid of consequences. My gosh, what if I make a mistake? But they're also very committed. Right? They're also very consistent and steadfast. Right? They can also be a good reality check for the leaders who are off creating new ideas. But those followers, hey, well, wait a minute. Is that really realistic? Can we really do that? Then you have the users. Boy. These guys, they take everything personally. They feel entitled and they're very selfish. They want something for nothing. And we all have customers that are like that. But we also have coworkers, CEOs, people that want to use other people or use situations for their benefit. And so when you have the users and the followers and the leaders, and you have executive leadership, and middle managers, frontline employees, and customers, this communication just becomes this intertangled web, which creates a true barrier to human connection. And so, who cares? So what? What does it matter, right? Executives are going to be executives. Customers are going to be customers. Does any of it really matter? I can tell you 100% it matters. Number one, it matters on a very personal level. When you have a situation where frontline employees feel like they're always wrong, you're going to have lack of motivation. You're going to have lack of productivity. You're going to experience high turnover. As business owners, none of us want that. But from a business health standpoint, everyone is so focused on growth. Grow, 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 acquire, 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 new customers, and you have to have that. And I am a big proponent of growth. So don't mishear what I'm saying. But if you do that in a way that you're not taking care of your existing customers and retaining your existing customers, you are missing the boat. Because new customer acquisition is 6 to 7 times more expensive than keeping a new one, than keeping your existing customer. And more importantly, a 5% increase in customer retention can grow your profits by as much as 25%. And I've seen numbers all over the board on this stat. I've seen numbers as much as 75%. And so depending obviously on your industry and the nature of your products and the nature of your business, that number is going to fluctuate. But the idea is true. Increase customer retention, you increase your profitability. So I'd like to open it up for discussion. I'm happy to answer any questions or share any of your experiences around any of those things. But I just want to leave you with the idea that, in summary, the customer service landscape is really hard. And frontline employees have an extremely difficult job. And equally difficult are the people that manage them. And trying to navigate these areas of gray, you can successfully do that and make real human connections, it's going to be better for your business. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate you all being here. It means a lot.